Hi all, this is Rahul from Way to Automation. So in this lecture, we're going to see how we can integrate our Protractor test for the REST API testing. Although Protractor is not for API testing, Protractor is only for UI testing, testing the web elements specifically. But this is based on one of the special requests from a student. So in one of his project, he got a task that he need to send some RESTful request using the GET and POST and other HTTP methods. So like this is one of the wonderful API that I came across, one of the node package that is Protractor API resource. This is basically built up on top of the request node package. So in case you use this, you install or you configure this Protractor API resource, then you should be able to send the request using the available HTTP methods, that is get, post, put, patch, and delete, right? So complete end-to-end example is already shown over here, but I'll gonna like create a project and show you like the practical functioning of these things on the practice API that I have designed. So if you are already familiar with basics of web services, basics of API testing, then you should be able to understand these things easily. Now, to get started, the very first thing we need to do is to install this Node module. So what I'm going to do, I'll copy this. I'll open up Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to create a new file over here. I'll name it as REST API test.js. Right, and I'll go to terminal from here. So go to open an integrated terminal, and here paste this. But before doing this, make sure you have package.json file available. So do npm init first and choose all by default options, and this should gonna create a package.json file, and we'll be storing this as a dev dependency. So hyphen save hyphen dev, and then install it. All the while installing, it may gonna show you some packages which are deprecated. So deprecation means you can still use it, but in case if you encounter any issues, then they might not gonna support this version. So there is some paid version as well. That is actually, they're saying that some paid support is available for older version, but don't worry about it. The version that we are going to use will actually going to fulfill the need that we need to integrate the API automation part, right? So once you have this dependency added, the other things that you need to do, it's quite simple. You first need to add this to your test. So a variable holding this resource. So go to your REST API test and paste it over here, right? And then if you look over here, so this is a JavaScript that you'll be needing. So first we need a describe block, and under that describe block, these are all service endpoints through which you can do get and the post method and the put method and the patch method, right? So these are the HTTP functions that you can call. And this is where in before all, we are actually initializing it. So this API source with whatever API that we are hitting, we actually need to pass that API URI over here, right? And we need to register this service with this service endpoint that we have defined, right? So this is what you'll be needing it. So what I'll do, I'm gonna open up my file where I have actually done little changes to it, and I'm just gonna copy it and paste it over here. So the only change that I did is, so over here, the naming that they have given is get post, create post, right? So post itself is a method. So instead of post, what I did, I changed it to get request, create request, and update request and batch request, right? So that's the only change, and I'm going to use this sample API that I've created. So this API, I'll be sharing it with you. The API looks like this. This is the REST API. You need to go to command prompt and type java-jar and give the name of this jar file and press enter. So this API is actually designed using Spring Boot. And once it is started, you need to go to your browser and type localhost 8080 and then followed by swagger-ui.html. So this API, if you look over here, these are the sample get request, post, put, delete, patch. So you can do all these things manually as well over here, and you can call these APIs using the coding part as well, programmatically, right? So let's say if I try out this get request and if I execute it, it will gonna show you in the response body what all list of users with their ID, email, last name, first name, right? In case you want to create any user or you want to get any particular user with let's say ID, if you try it out, you just need to pass on the ID and execute it. You're gonna see only one record shown over here, right? So you can delete a user, you can modify a user. So a lot of things you can do it manually, but we're going to handle it with the help of the program that we are going to write over here, right? So the URL will be localhost 8080 and then API and user. So if you go over here, when you are hitting this request, you can see the URI that you got over here is HTTP localhost API users. So that is what we actually need to provide over here, right? So this is your service endpoints. You can see service endpoints are basically after this, in case you want to get any particular user with the ID. So you need to provide the ID. Then you want to create a user. So you need to fire a post request. So there's no endpoint to that, right? So then update is there, patch is there. So now let us try hitting the very first request. So the very first request I'll be hitting is the get request, and let's see what they have given for get. So this is a simple get request looks like. Now what I'll do, I'll just copy this stuff from here and we'll try to put this it block over here, test get method. For the time being, I'm just going to remove this, and from this code I am again going to do some changes. So I'm not validating any response, I just want to print the response. So for the very first ID, I want to print console.log and I want to get this actual response. So let's try printing it, and you need to make sure that once the request is done, you need to call the done function over here. Otherwise, the program will not going to terminate, right? So this is what you need to do, and the file name is REST API test.js. This you need to pass on to your conf.js. So I'll name it as REST API test.js. And at the moment, I don't want to launch any browser. I don't want to do any validation on the UI. I just want to play around with these APIs. So what I did for the browser Chrome, I'm launching it in headless mode, right? If you add this Chrome options argument -- headless and then window size, something like this, so it will not gonna launch any browser. The execution will be done headless, right? So let's go over here and let's let me first clear everything, and then gonna write protractor conf.js. So let's run this and let's see what happens. Okay, we got some error. So it says API client get post is not a function. This is because we change it to get request. So it's not get post, it's get request. Okay. So now it is actually trying to hit this request, but somehow we are getting unhandled rejection status code error 400. So let's see why we are getting this. Okay, I know why we are getting it. So this post ID should be ID. Right, this is because I copy pasted, but I made changes over here. So it was actually, if you look at this documentation, they've actually mentioned it as post ID. Right, so their endpoints include post. Right, so they are giving you a sample API. You can even practice on this API as well. Right, so their endpoint is post and then the ID that you need to provide. But here, if you look over here, I've removed post and I've just given the ID over here. So now if I do Control C to kill it and then again run it, so you can see one spec successfully executed, no failures. And over here, you should be able to see the response that we got for the ID 1. Now, if you go back to your API and if you just search for a user with the ID 1, then this is the ID 1 that you got, right? So this is how we have successfully executed our first RESTful API test, right? So now we're going to do some validation with the response that we got. And after that, we may try firing some more HTTP methods, like after get, we shall try for post as well, right? So, but before that, let us try doing some validation. What I'll do, I'll create one more it block. So I'll name it as validate response from get request. Right. So after getting the response, so response, we are getting it like this. Right. So what I'll do is I'll first create a variable that is expected response. And what I'm going to add in this response is the ID. So ID should be 1, then email. So email is this. Then we have first name. And then we have last name. Right. So we need to, this is my expected response. Now I want to validate it with the actual response. So I can simply say expect. So I'll add expect assertion. And then I'll say expect actual response. dot to equal, so it should be to equal expected response, right? So these are the Jasmine assertions. Now if I run this, let us see about the second test that should be successful. C2 spec, no failures, right? Both of them are successfully executed. So if I change this to, let's say, Rahul 1, and if I again run this, we should get a failure. See, we got a failure. And let's see. So expected first name to Rahul to equal to Rahul 1, right? So this was the expected response and this is the actual response, right? So this is how we have validated the data from the response. Not just this, I mean, in case you want to validate any specific data as well, you can simply validate it something like you want to get email from this actual response. So you can say actual response dot email, right? You can give the field over here, say dot to equal this email to equal trainer at way2automation.com, like this. And let me correct this as well. So if I run this, if both matches, then there should not be any failure. See? No failures. And if I change this to something else, and again run this, you'll see a failure. Right? So the assertion failure, expect failed, and this was the actual and this is the expected. Right? So same way, in case you want to print any value, you want to print first name, you can print it using console.log. So say console.log and simply say actual response dot first name, and it should print the first name as well over here, right? So no browser is launching, right? You can feel that you're actually doing API automation stuff itself, right? So you can see this is printed over here, right? Now same way, we're gonna add one more request. So this will be the post. I'm gonna create some data. So what I'll do, I'll just copy this and paste it over here. I'll remove all these things and then I'm gonna say create user via post request. So in post request, what we need to do is if you go over here, where is the post? So we need to pass on the payload, right? So if we look at the post request for creating a user, so what fields that we see, ID is auto generated. So we need to pass email, first name, and last name. So these are the three values that we need to pass. We need to send it as a JSON request. So how are we going to send it? I'll give this a name as payload and remove the ID part from here. Right. And then instead of this ID 1, we need to pass it like this. So create post and then pass on the payload like this to JSON. So like this. And instead of get request, we're gonna say create request. Create request. Oh, not here. It should be over here. Right. And now let's say the next name that I'm going to add is, let's say, mm, Tom, and let's say Jerry. Right, and I'm going to say Tom at waytoautomation.com. So this is the payload that I'm sending, right? So let me run this again and see if we are able to send the post request successfully or not. Okay, we got some exception over here. Unexpected end of JSON. So why we got this? Let's see. If I'm not validating anything right now, so I can remove this part and break it over here and then say done. So this is just a sample API, right? Maybe the JSON part might be creating some issue while sending the post request. But let me see if I run this now. You can see 3 specs successfully executed, right? And if I go back to the API and see the last user over here is with the ID 10. If I refresh it, if I execute it again, you should be able to see, okay, there are 2 records over here. It means the previous step was also successful. It's just that like there was some other issue. Whatever that we have removed is working fine now, right? So again, it created another user. But the ID is always unique, right? If in case I go over here and change this to Tom1 and again execute it, and if I again refresh this, execute, you can see Tom1 is created. Only single entry is there, right? So that is how, I mean, this is very small example of how you can integrate the API testing part in case you have complex APIs available, right? You can even, at times there are authentication available, auth1, auth2. So they have something for basic authentication as well, some token based authentication as well. So just give it a try if in case your need is to integrate your Protractor API test with the RESTful APIs, then you can try using this npm package, right? There are a number of npm package available. So request module is there, REST layer is there, a number of npm packages are there. But this is something I found it very simple and very easy to integrate, right? And specifically designed for Protractor integration itself. So just give it a try and see if you are able to automate some part of your RESTful APIs. So that's all in this lecture. Thank you.